The centrality of an argument. What is an argument? Argument refers to any way in which humans express themselves to achieve a specific purpose. In fact, you could say that arguments encompass nearly all forms of communication. Try counting the number of arguments you either make or encounter in just one day. It might surprise you how often you engage in them. I live alone, so I only have to argue with myself, which is still a process, right? Argue with myself all day, every day about why I should or should not do things. Words and images can make a strong visual arguments. Arguments always have a purpose. It's up to you as a reader or listener to distinguish the strong argument from the weak ones. Purposes of arguments. Arguments serve many purposes, including 1. To explore an idea or issue. 2. To understand the situation better. 3. To seek consensus among a group. 4. To make decisions or judgments. 5. To convince or persuade someone. Context matters. The effectiveness of an argument depends on the context and the audience. What works for one group may not work for another. It's important to tailor your evidence and reasoning to your specific audience. Again, I go back, you're going to make an argument to your friends. It might not be as effective as you making an argument to your parents, right? You may have to retailer that or to your children, right? It's going to have to be a different argument. You're going to have to phrase it in a different way than you may have to for other people. Chapter 19, Analyzing and Constructing Arguments. The nature of arguments. Arguments don't appear out of thin air. Every argument is part of a larger conversation, whether it's responding to a statement, event, image, or something else. Readers always pay attention to the source of an argument. Is it from a reputable news outlet or a casual Twitter feed? Where is the author coming from? Understanding the context is key. Authors. Think about where you're coming from in your arguments. What's your stance? How do you want your audience to perceive you? Through your choice of words, tone, images, and design, you reveal not only your message, but also your attitude toward the subject and your audience. Claims and arguments. Arguments often begin with a claim, an arguable statement that must be supported by reasons and evidence. As an author, remember that a claim should be arguable, worth debating, not just a personal opinion or indisputable fact. Clear and explicit. In academic writing, a claim is often stated explicitly in the form of a thesis. It should clearly state your position and engage your readers. What's at stake? To understand the core of an argument, use stasis theory, a system developed by ancient Roman rhetoricians. Ask these 4 questions. What are the facts? What happened? How should this issue be defined? Why does the issue matter? How significant is it? And 4, what actions should be taken? These questions help determine the main issue at stake in any argument, guiding both the reader and the writer in evaluating or constructing a strong argument. Persuasive strategies, emotional, ethical, and logical appeals. Aristotle defined 3 key modes of persuasion, and these are the 3 key things that you could talk about in your rhetorical essay, okay? These are it right here. Pathos, emotional appeals. Stir emotions and invoke values. Tip, be careful not to cross into coercion or manipulation. Emotional appeals should support your claim, not manipulate your audience. 2, ethos, ethical appeals. Establish credibility and character. Tip, show you're trustworthy by using fair language and acknowledging other perspectives. Build common ground with your audience. And then 3, logos, logical appeals. Appeal to logic and reason. Provide solid evidence such as facts, statistics, and data. Logical appeals are critical in supporting your argument, but remember that emotion often plays a role in decision making too. Then we got types of evidence. When constructing an argument, consider the following types of evidence. 1, facts and statistics, widely accepted as true but always verify accuracy. 2, surveys and questionnaires, useful for gathering opinions. 3, observations. First-hand observations can be powerful in arguments. And 4, interviews and testimony, especially from experts. These add credibility. I'm saying it all semester. This is one of those things I'll have to preface from now on at the beginning of my courses. It's never been easier to have a survey or questionnaire, right? You can write your own survey or questionnaire and send it out via Google Docs to many, many people, right? You can write your own. and get your own data for things. I think that's so cool. So if you really want to make a survey, or you really want to, you got a question you don't think there's enough information about, you can make your own survey these days and send it to many people. You could probably put it on your own social media feed and get many people to fill it out for you, right? And figure out some information. Again, this might be for like a smaller topic. You might have like a topic that you think is like less people are concerned with, or not enough people have talked about or thought about, and you could really you could come up with your own survey, right? Come up with your own questions for something like that. 5, personal experience can provide an emotional or authentic connection. 6, visual evidence, charts, images, and graphs help illustrate a point. Common logical fallacies. Beware of these logical fallacies which weaken arguments. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in this section as well. Ad hominem, attacking the person instead of the argument. Bandwagon appeals, encouraging people to follow the crowd. Begging the question, restating the argument in a different way rather than providing evidence. False dilemmas, presenting only 2 choices when more options exist. Faulty analogies, using a comparison that doesn't hold up. And slippery slope, suggesting a minor action will lead to a major, often disastrous consequence. Consider other perspectives. An effective argument acknowledges other viewpoints. Failure to do so may make you appear biased or close-minded. By fairly considering other arguments, you demonstrate credibility and a willingness to engage with the larger conversation. Structure an argument. There are several ways to structure your argument. 1, the classical argument. The introduction. Engage the reader and state your claim. This has a body that provides background, evidence, and addresses counterarguments. Conclusion. Summarize your argument and call for action. Then we got the Toulamin argument. The claim. Present a debatable claim and carefully qualify it. The grounds. Provide evidence and address underlying assumptions, warrants, and conclusion. Restate the claim and discuss its implications. Rogerian argument. Identify the issue and acknowledge various viewpoints. The body respectfully discusses positions and propose a compromise. Conclusions. Propose a mutually beneficial resolution. Invitational argument. Introduction. Acknowledge multiple perspectives and encourage dialogue. Body. Respectfully describe each viewpoint and explore common ground. Conclusion. Ask readers to consider all viewpoints before making a decision. The power of argument. Argument is at the heart of all communication. Whether you're exploring, understanding, persuading, or seeking consensus, mastering the art of argument will allow you to engage in meaningful conversations, construct compelling arguments, and critically assess the arguments you encounter. The role of logic in argumentation. In any argument, whether it's casual conversation, a political debate, or an academic essay, logic plays a crucial role in persuading others and building a solid case. However, sometimes arguments contain flaws in reasoning, which are known as logical fallacies. These fallacies can weaken arguments, mislead audiences, and undermine the credibility of the speaker or writer. In this lecture, we'll break down some of the most common logical fallacies, how to recognize them, and why it's essential to avoid them in your own writing and speaking. First off, what is a logical fallacy? A logical fallacy is a flaw in reasoning. It's an error in the logical structure of an argument that renders it invalid, or at the very least weakens its effectiveness. While some fallacies are easy to spot, others can be quite subtle and persuasive. Knowing how to identify these fallacies is important, not just for constructing better arguments, but for evaluating the arguments that others make. These are the types of logical fallacies. The most common fallacies you'll encounter: 1, ad hominem, to the person. Definition. An ad hominem fallacy occurs when someone attacks the character or personal traits of the person, making an argument rather than addressing the content of the argument itself. Does that make sense to everyone? We're attacking the person. We're not attacking what they've said. Somebody can make a really good argument, but then you're like, hey, his shoes are blue. We don't like that. That's an ad hominem argument, right? Like you are just attacking the person personally versus what they are actually talking about. You've chosen to avoid the argument and you've chosen to instead like argue about the person and his credibility, okay? Instead of responding to someone's argument about environmental policy, you say, you can't trust their opinion on climate change, they dropped out of college. You see here, we're just attacking the person. I think you'll see this one happens all the time, okay? People don't actually talk about the actual argument, they just attack the person who's making the argument. Why it's a fallacy. The fallacy sidesteps the actual issue and attacks the individual. It's important to engage with the content of someone's argument, not their personal background or identity. Even if someone is not an expert or has personal flaws, their argument may still hold merit. 2. The straw man. A straw man fallacy occurs when someone distorts or oversimplifies another person's argument in order to make it easier to attack or refute. Example, person A. We should have stricter regulations on pollution to protect the environment. Person B. Person A wants to shut down all factories and put everyone out of work. Why it's a fallacy. Person B is misrepresenting person A's position, making it easier to attack. The original argument wasn't about shutting down factories, but about reducing pollution. By exaggerating or distorting the argument, the response becomes unfair and dishonest. Everyone see that one? We're just changing the argument that they're talking about, right? Again, person A talking about regulations on pollution. Person B makes that out to be we're shutting down every factory. Again, I think this is another one you probably see all the time on TV in politics, right? Where it's just like we're having an argument about something and somebody just changes the argument, or they add positions to the argument that weren't there initially to change everything up, okay? False dilemma, either or fallacy. A false dilemma, also known as either or fallacy, occurs when only two options are presented as the only possible outcomes, when in reality there are other alternatives. For example, either you support full government control of healthcare or you don't care about people's well-being. Why it's a fallacy. This argument presents only two extreme positions and ignores any potential middle ground. And in reality, there are many ways to approach healthcare reform. The false dilemma limits the complexity of the issue, forcing an artificial choice between two extremes, either A or B, right? This does not have to be true. There's so many different solutions to things. To just limit ourselves to only two solutions to any problem is it's no good, right? It's a fallacy. There's always probably a third option that we don't even talk about. Slippery slope. This is one of my favorite ones. The slippery slope fallacy occurs when someone argues that a small first step will inevitably lead to a chain of events, resulting in something much more extreme, without providing evidence that this progression is likely. For example, if we allow students to wear hats in class, next thing you know, they'll stop following any dress code at all, and soon no one will respect authority. I think that the best real-life example of a slippery slope argument is the marijuana argument of years past, where if you smoke any marijuana, you're likely to get addicted to all these other drugs, right? It just is like, there's A up here, and then there's F all the way down here. Like, there's no middle ground. There's no, like, correlating evidence there. It's just a fallacy, right? Like, these things don't correlate to A and B. Like, you're just making an extreme case example that probably doesn't happen all the time. It's a slippery slope. Why it's a fallacy? The slippery slope assumes a series of extreme consequences without showing how one leads to the other. Just because one event occurs does not necessarily mean that a series of disastrous events will follow. The fallacy manipulates fear rather than providing logical evidence. Bandwagon appeals, ad populum. A bandwagon appeal or ad populum fallacy occurs when something is deemed correct or valid simply because it's popular or widely accepted. For example, everyone is switching to this new phone, so it must be the best one on the market. Just because something is popular doesn't make it right or the best option. This fallacy appeals to the idea that if many people believe in something, it must be true, which is not necessarily the case. Arguments should be based on the evidence, not the number of people who agree. Right? If everybody's jumping off of a cliff, would you do it too? Is that the old saying? I probably messed it up, but that's what we mean here, right? It's like, don't do something because everybody thinks it's great, right? That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best argument. 6, begging the question, circular reasoning. Begging the question or circular reasoning occurs when the conclusion of an argument is assumed in its premise. Essentially, the argument goes in circles because it relies on conclusions as proof. I think this is one of the harder ones to really think about, but example, reading books is important because it's necessary to read. You see how both sides of that argument are exactly the same? There's like really no argument there. I'm just making two statements of fact, right? I'm proving my point by proving my point. Why it's a fallacy. The argument doesn't actually provide a reason for why reading books is important. Instead, it just restates the premise in different words. The fallacy lacks real support for the claim and simply assumes what it's trying to prove. I think in philosophy, the example was like, the dog has spots. Or like, yeah, the dog has spots, like why? Because it's a spotty dog or something like, it just is like both sides, it's the same one. Like, they just say the same thing on both sides of the sentence. 7, hasty generalization. A hasty generalization occurs when a conclusion is drawn from insufficient or biased evidence. Example, my 2 friends dropped out of college, so I guess college isn't worth it for anyone. Why it's a fallacy. This argument takes a small sample size and makes a broad generalization about all people based on that limited evidence. It ignores other possible outcomes and experiences, leading to an unjustified conclusion. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. Faulty causality. Post hoc ergo propter hoc, Latin for after this, therefore because of this, assumes that because one event followed another, the first event must have caused the second. Example, I wore my lucky socks and we won the game, so my socks must have caused the win. Why it's a fallacy. Just because 2 events happen in sequence doesn't mean that one caused the other. This fallacy confuses correlation with causation, leading to incorrect assumptions. Why understanding logical fallacies matter. Moreover, being aware of these fallacies helps you critically evaluate the arguments you encounter in everyday life. Whether you're listening to a politician, reading an article, or discussing issues with friends, recognizing logical fallacies allows you to identify weak points and avoid being misled. Conclusion, strengthening your arguments. To become a stronger writer, speaker, and thinker, you must be able to construct arguments based on sound reasoning. Avoiding logical fallacies ensures that your arguments are clear, logical, and persuasive. Keep the following in mind as you move forward. Always ask yourself whether your reasoning is sound. Identify and avoid logical fallacies in your own arguments. Critically analyze the arguments of others, looking for logical flaws. Strengthen your claims by using valid evidence and reasoning free from fallacious thinking. And by mastering the art of argumentation and avoiding these common logical pitfalls, you'll be able to engage in more productive and thoughtful discussion. Now, I think I said we talk about this, counter arguments and rebuttals. Why counter arguments and rebuttals matter. In persuasive writing or speech, it's not enough to simply present your argument and hope your audience will accept it without question. People naturally have opposing views, and ignoring those views can weaken your argument. This is where the importance of counter-arguments and rebuttals come into play. Today, we'll explore how addressing and refuting counter-arguments strengthens your position, demonstrating fairness and deepening the logic of your case. We'll also differentiate between refutation and concession, and learn how to incorporate rebuttals without weakening your stance. 1. Why acknowledging counter-arguments is crucial. It builds credibility and trust. When you acknowledge counter-arguments, you demonstrate to your audience that you considered multiple perspectives. You're not trying to hide or ignore opposing viewpoints. You're open to reasonable debate, which makes you appear more credible and fair-minded. Again, in law, you have to do this, right? Because the other side is going to make an argument that's against yours. So you have to think about their perspective as well and why that perspective is wrong, if that makes sense. So you got to think about this. But this is also important for this level of writing as well. I just bring that up for like, when you think about it like that. As like somebody else is going to make an argument against me. I have to know what they're already talking about, right? By showing that you understand the complexities of an issue, you gain trust of your audience, even if they initially disagree with you. They're more likely to respect your position and take your argument seriously. B, it strengthens your argument. Addressing counter-arguments doesn't weaken your argument, it makes it stronger. Here's why. You can preemptively address concerns your audience may have. If you don't acknowledge the opposition, your readers may feel you're oversimplifying the issue. Counterarguments allow you to anticipate and respond to objections before they even arise, creating a more comprehensive and thoughtful case. 2. The difference between refutation and concession. When dealing with counterarguments, there are two primary ways to respond: refutation and concession. Each serves a different purpose, and choosing between them depends on the strength of the opposing argument. A. Refutation. Refutation involves directly addressing a counterargument and proving it wrong with evidence or logic. For example, if the opposing argument states electric cars are too expensive for most people to afford, a refutation might include data showing that the cost of electric vehicles has been decreasing steadily, and government incentives make them affordable. Refutation works best when your counterargument is flawed, weak, or based on incorrect information. By refuting it, you can demonstrate the superiority of your position. Concession. Sometimes it's not possible to entirely refute a counterargument. In these cases, you might offer a concession. A concession is an acknowledgement that the opposing argument has some validity, but it does not negate your overall position. For example, if the opposing argument states electric cars require charging stations, which are not as common as gas stations, you might concede that this is true. However, you could follow with a rebuttal stating, but charging infrastructure is rapidly expanding, and there are plans to increase the number of charging statements significantly in the next few years. A concession shows that you are being honest and reasonable, acknowledging a valid point, but also explains why it doesn't undermine your broader argument. In this case, right, you are accepting that the other argument is a good argument, okay? You're just saying why it's going to change, or you're going to have your own reasons for why, even though it's a good argument, your argument is better. 3. Incorporating rebuttals without weakening your position. Incorporating rebuttals effectively requires skill. Here are some tips to help you integrate counter arguments without weakening your position. A. Keep control of the argument. Even when addressing counter arguments, maintain control of the narrative. Briefly state the counter argument, then immediately provide your rebuttal. Don't dwell too long on the opposing view or make it seem stronger than your own. Be clear and concise. Keep the focus on the reasons why your position is the stronger one. B. Use evidence. A rebuttal is only as strong as the evidence supporting it. When responding to counterarguments, back up your rebuttal with solid evidence. Use facts, data, or expert opinions to disprove or weaken the counterargument. Avoid vague rebuttals that rely on generalization and assumptions. C. Balance emotional appeals and logic. While logic appeals, logos, are crucial in rebuttals, emotional appeals, pathos, can also be effective if used ethically. You want your audience to feel that you understand their concerns or doubts. You're offering a solution or perspective that aligns with their values. For instance, when rebutting the claim that electric cars aren't practical for long-distance travel, you could balance logical evidence about improvements in battery technology with an emotional appeal about the importance of reducing carbon emissions for future generations. 4. Examples of strong rebuttals in writing and speech. Let's look at some examples of how to effectively incorporate rebuttals. Claim: social media is a waste of time and distracts students from their academic responsibilities. Refutation: while it's true that social media can be distracting, it also provides numerous educational opportunities. Platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn offer professional networking opportunities, and many teachers use social media to engage students in discussions about academic subjects. In this example, the writer first acknowledges the valid concern, distraction, but quickly refutes it by pointing out the educational benefits of social media. B. Examples in speech. In the famous 2013 debate on climate change, Bill Nye addresses the counter-arguments that climate change is part of a natural cycle. He conceded that Earth's climate does have natural cycles, but then he provided a rebuttal, supported by scientific evidence that shows how human activity is rapidly accelerating these changes at an unnatural rate. Examples of concession and rebuttal. Claim: electric cars take too long to charge, making them inconvenient for many drivers. Concessions: it's true that charging times are longer than filling up a gas tank. Rebuttal: However, charging technology is improving rapidly, and most people charge their cars overnight when they're not using them. In fact, many drivers are finding that this fits conveniently into their routine. This example demonstrates how to concede a point, but immediately offers a rebuttal that weakens the impact of the counterargument. Conclusion: counterarguments and rebuttals are key to strong arguments. Addressing counterarguments is essential for building a well-rounded and persuasive case. Whether you choose to refute or concede, acknowledging opposing viewpoints make you appear more credible and demonstrates that you've considered all angles of the issue. Remember, always back up your rebuttals with strong evidence, keep control of the argument, and balance logic with emotional appeals. By doing so, you not only strengthen your own position, but also engage in a more meaningful and respectful dialogue with your audience. Takeaways: don't be afraid of counterarguments. Use them as opportunities to refine and strengthen your arguments.